You're in your kitchen, maybe it's a Sunday morning. Coffee brewing, sunlight coming through the window at that perfect low angle. A song comes on, something with a beat, and without thinking your body starts moving. A shoulder roll, a head nod. Maybe you're not even aware it's happening. One moment you're pouring milk into a mug, and the next moment you're doing a full spin around the kitchen island. Like nobody's watching, it feels effortless. It feels automatic, it feels like the most natural thing in the world. Now here's what makes that moment genuinely strange. Your dog is sitting right there hearing the exact same song. And it's doing nothing, not a paw tap, not a head bob, not a single involuntary muscle twitch in time with the beat. Your dog loves you, your dog responds to your voice, to emotional tone, to the sound of a treat bag from 3 rooms away. But the beat, it means absolutely nothing. Neither does it to a chimpanzee, our closest living relative, the animal that shares 98.7% of our DNA, who in laboratory settings has shown zero ability to synchronize movement to an external rhythm. So the question is simple. Why can you dance? What do you have that almost every other animal on Earth is missing? And why does a parrot of all creatures share it with you? Let's start with what dancing actually is. Because your brain is doing something miraculous every single time, and it never once asks your permission. When you hear a beat, your auditory cortex isn't just passively receiving sound. It's doing something far more sophisticated. It's extracting a pattern from the chaos of noise, predicting when the next beat will arrive. And then this is the part that separates dancing from just hearing. It is pre-programming your motor system to arrive at that moment, before the beat actually hits. You're not reacting to music. You're anticipating it. Your body is moving into the future, placing itself precisely in time, like catching a ball you haven't thrown yet. This requires a very specific neural highway, a direct, high-bandwidth connection between your auditory processing regions and your motor planning regions. In most animals, those two systems are essentially isolated from each other. Sound comes and movement goes out, but they don't talk, not in real time. Not with the kind of precision that lets you stay on beat through a tempo change, or anticipate the drop before it happens, or feel the exact moment a song wants you to move. Here's what doesn't make sense until you think about it. Humans aren't even the most rhythmically capable animals. In other respects, many species have far more precise timing in their nervous systems. For survival tasks, the nanosecond precision of a bat's sonar, the micro-timing of a hummingbird's wing beat, timing itself isn't rare. What's rare is hooking that timing system up to sound in a way that allows voluntary synchronization with an external beat. That specific architecture, the auditory-motor coupling, appears in the animal kingdom almost nowhere. In 2006, a researcher at Tufts University named Anirudh Patel was thinking about parrots. Specifically, he was thinking about why a parrot can imitate your voice, while a chimpanzee cannot, and it led him to an idea that would quietly rewrite how scientists think about music, movement, and what it means to be human. Patel proposed what is now known as the vocal learning and rhythmic synchronization hypothesis. The idea is elegantly strange. The ability to entrain to lock your movement onto an external beat isn't really about music at all. It's a byproduct, a side effect, a free bonus that comes bundled with a completely different, much older skill, the ability to learn new vocalizations by listening to them. Think about what vocal learning actually requires. To copy a sound you've never made before, your brain needs to run a continuous feedback loop between what your ears are hearing and what your vocal motor system is doing. You have to hear something, predict how to reproduce it, attempt the reproduction, hear your own attempt, compare it to the original, and adjust in real time. That loop, auditory input, feeding directly into motor planning, with constant bidirectional communication, is essentially the same infrastructure that allows you to entrain to a beat. The two abilities are running on the same hardware. Humans are vocal learners. Chimpanzees, despite their intelligence, are not. They are born with a fixed vocal repertoire they cannot meaningfully modify. Parrots are extraordinary vocal learners, which is why they can say, "Polly wants a cracker," and also why, if Patel was right, they should theoretically be able to dance. He was right, and he knew he was right before most of the world did, because of a sulfur-crested cockatoo named Snowball. Snowball's owner had posted a video online in 2007, a white cockatoo bobbing his head and lifting his feet in unmistakable rhythmic synchronization with the Backstreet Boys. Everybody, the internet, thought it was cute. Scientists thought it was impossible. Patel thought it was a natural experiment. That had just landed in his inbox. Here's the part nobody talks about. The skeptical explanation for animal dancing is always the same. The animal is responding to cues from the humans in the room. The owner bobs their head. The animal mimics its social mirroring. Not beat perception clean. Simple and completely dismissive. So Patel and his team designed a test to rule that out. They isolated the musical variable. They took the same song and played it to Snowball at 11 different tempos. Some faster than the original, some slower. No human in the room, no visual cues. Just a bird and a speaker. Snowball adjusted every time. When the tempo slowed, his movement slowed. When it sped up, his foot lifts and head bobs sped up to match. The synchronization wasn't perfect. Snowball drifted in and out of the beat the way a human would. But it was undeniably real. The study was published in Current Biology in 2009. A bird had changed everything. Since then, the list has grown. Ronan, a California sea lion at UC Santa Cruz, was trained to bob her head to a beat in 2013. And the significance was enormous because sea lions are not vocal learners in the traditional sense, which complicated and enriched Patel's original hypothesis. Asian elephants, some species of songbird hummingbirds, each new case adding texture and nuance. But Snowball remains the icon. A bird with no hands, no feet. Designed for dance floors. No reason whatsoever to be doing this. Doing it anyway, doing it on beat. Adjusting when the song changed. Think about that for a second. Whatever is happening in Snowball's brain, it is functionally homologous to what is happening in yours. Every Sunday morning in the kitchen. Evolution working independently on two completely separate lineages. Arrived at the same solution to the same problem. It wasn't even trying to solve. But here's where it gets even more interesting. Because humans don't just dance. We dance together, and that difference between dancing alone and dancing synchronized with other bodies may be the most important thing that ever happened to our species. In 2009, Scott Wiltermuth at Stanford ran a series of experiments, testing what happened to groups of people who walked in synchronicity versus groups who walked out of step. The synchronized groups afterward showed measurably higher levels of cooperation, trust, and willingness to sacrifice personal gain for the group's benefit. They hadn't talked more, they hadn't been told to trust each other. They just moved together, and somehow that was enough. This effect has been replicated in rowing crews, in military marching, in children doing synchronized tasks as young as 4 years old. The mechanism appears to be partly neurological. Synchronized movement floods the brain with signals of social connection, and partly evolutionary. A group that moves together is a group that has demonstrated over and over that it can coordinate. In an environment where coordinated group action is the difference between eating and starving, between repelling an attack and being massacred, the ability to synchronize movement to a shared beat is not entertainment, it is infrastructure. Your ancestors didn't build ballrooms. They built fire circles, they danced around them for hours, for days at the edges of survival. Decisions that would determine whether the tribe survived the winter. The anthropological record, thin as it is for behavior, shows evidence of ritual group movement, going back at least 40,000 years. A painted cave in South Africa's Lascaux. Equivalent human figures in apparent procession, arranged around what appears to be a communal gathering. The specific technology of synchronized movement. Call it dance, call it ritual, call it ceremony, appears everywhere human beings appear. Every culture, every continent, every era. It is not decoration. It arrived with us. Here's what doesn't make sense until you think about it. The same neurological system that lets you lock onto a beat, that emerged from vocal learning that you share with a parrot. But not a chimpanzee. That system became in human hands. The social glue of civilization itself. The auditory-motor connection that helps a cockatoo copy sounds became scaled up across 100,000 years of social living. The technology that lets strangers trust each other enough to build cities. So now you have to ask the deeper question, the one that Patel's hypothesis quietly opens up and then leaves sitting there on the table. If beat and training evolved independently in humans and in vocal learning birds, if it emerged in two completely separate lineages, shaped by two completely different evolutionary pressures, separated by hundreds of millions of years of divergence, what does that tell you about music itself? One interpretation is the standard one. Music is a human invention. We built it, we refined it. We exported it to a few species. Through the cognitive overlap created by vocal learning. We are the source, and everything else is echo. But there's another interpretation. One that is harder to shake once you've really sat with it. What if music, or more precisely the mathematical structure underlying music, the periodicity, the nested rhythms, the predictable patterns that your auditory cortex is built to extract, isn't invented at all? What if it's discovered? What if any sufficiently complex system that processes sound and coordinates movement will inevitably arrive at something like entrainment? Because entrainment is just what happens when auditory and motor systems are wired together tightly enough. What if Snowball didn't learn to dance because he encountered human music? What if he danced because the universe has a beat and his brain was complex enough to hear it? You can dismiss that as poetic, but consider, we don't say language is a universal feature of the cosmos just because all humans develop it. Yet language is also not arbitrarily invented. It emerges from the specific cognitive architecture of the human brain, built by evolution over millions of years, shaped by the physics of sound and the structure of social information. Maybe music is the same, not random, not arbitrary. The specific pattern that emerges when brains built to model the world start modeling time. Winter came at your ancestors with everything it had. It came with cold that killed, with darkness that lasted months, with isolation that fractured groups, and starvation that finished them. They answered it with fire, with stored food, with shelter and skin. But they also answered it with something else. They answered it by standing together around those fires and moving in time. They solved the problem of social trust with the same tool a parrot uses to learn your voice. The auditory motor loop, the beat, the ability to hear the future, one rhythmic pulse at a time, and place your body inside it. They turned a neural quirk into a civilization-building technology. And they did it before writing, before agriculture, before cities, before almost anything else we think of as human. What you did this morning in your kitchen without thinking that was 40,000 years old at minimum. It was older than every institution, every language, every religion. That shoulder roll, that half spin, that unconscious nod of the head. You inherited it from people who danced in the dark, around fires that were the only light for miles, in a world that was trying to kill them, and found that when they moved together, they were somehow less afraid. You are not dancing because you are sophisticated. You are dancing because your ancestors were, and because somewhere in East Africa, hundreds of thousands of years ago, the auditory cortex and the motor cortex began to talk to each other in a way that no chimpanzees ever has. And the first person to feel that conversation in their body stood up and moved, and the people around them saw it and felt the pull to move too. And in that moment, something began. Your coffee's getting cold. The song's still playing, and your body already knows what to do.